And yet, as Commissioner Middleton said, we have incredible math faculty across our state who are working tirelessly on this effort. And I think about my experience. I started at a community college, and specifically because my ACT scores were not high enough to place in college level math at the university where I wanted to go. And so I went to a local community college who would let me just get into that math class, and I spent 20 hours a week in the summer getting up to that college level. So I think your attention and your ability to look at these issues systemically for our community colleges is incredibly helpful. So as we think about advocate, communicate, and collaborate, you're familiar with our advocacy at community colleges. We do come to the legislature. We often come to you and ask for things that we really think are important for our community college students. And I can tell you that Oregon's 17 community colleges are led by incredible presidents who I hope that you see as subject matter experts on community colleges. And I know that they stand ready to answer any questions or provide information. And then I wanted to point to our State of the College or State of the Association report that's on our website, and I'll make sure that Jeffrey has a link that we can send out to you. But it really is a great recap of all the work that OCCA does and the work that our incredible staff is doing. And then I have to say publicly that we really appreciate the work and the partnership with our university partners on the Transfer Council specifically. And we are pleased to be in alignment with HECC and Director Cannon's leadership in this area, and the presentation recently to the legislature on the work that is being done. We support continued work on that, and I wanted to acknowledge Kyle Thomas and his leadership, and that it's a lot to manage, and he keeps people focused and moving forward in that. So that's very important and very appreciated. When we think about communicating, I'm grateful. Director Cannon takes my phone calls, he meets with me, he answers my questions, and that I think really shows the value for taking a lot of input across our state. He came to the Oregon President's Council to share the strategic planning process, and that was really helpful, and then came back again to kind of update us on the things that you're going to be hearing tomorrow. And so I can offer to you that our colleges, as well as OCCA, we are looking to align our priorities with your priorities, because they really are all of ours. And I also wanted to acknowledge that Vice Chair Heyman came out to meet with our presidents too. And so that's always a great connection. But both Director Cannon and Donna Llewellyn meet with us regularly, and we appreciate having seats at the table. And then when we think about collaborating, I want you to know, and some of our university partners would also share, that we are a part of a new coalition of labor, student groups, and university partners who are coming together to really advocate collectively on higher education budgets. And so I think that's an exciting effort, and is really a way that we're trying to connect. And then finally, I'm really happy to report that our community college enrollment is up. You're going to see those fourth week numbers, and we're excited that our students are coming back. They are coming back in some of the most expensive programs, as you know, in our CTE and workforce development. And so we're going to continue to highlight how that it improves Oregon's economy and our role in that. I also want to thank you for your commitment to higher education and for your willingness to get out to our campuses. I've heard from so many of our college presidents how much they appreciate those one-on-one conversations, as well as just being able to showcase the great things that are happening at our colleges, and it really shows your commitment to that. You're all invited to our conference, which is coming up in November, and with that, I'm grateful to be here, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Nice to have you as the new executive director, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks for being here. Okay, our final agenda item today is we have Dr. Adrienne Biddings, the relatively new, not quite new, president of Portland Community College, and we're happy to have you here and have you introduce yourself to us and tell us about the work, the most important work you're doing at PCC. Yes, yes, yes.
Well, thank you for having me, Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Heyman, Executive Director Ben Cannon, and Commissioner. Just honored to be here before you and share a little bit about Portland Community College. And there is a PowerPoint.
Yes.
Mike, okay, switch. Okay. Oh,
Yep, you got it.
there we go. Am I supposed to see the PowerPoint or?
Yeah, you'll see it.
You'll
Okay.
see it.
Well, while they're doing that, so to not belabor time, I'll start with PCC's mission because I always try to uplift that to hone in on our mission as our North Star and why we do what we do day in and day out. No matter the role or partnership that we have, we always seek to align with our mission. And so our mission is that we support student success by delivering access to quality education by advancing economic development and promoting sustainability in a collaborative culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I always like to say the action words have ing because it's active and it's in motion and it's nothing that should stop. And so we put the ing in our mission by all that we do. And so that is our mission, and we uplift that internally and externally, but wanted to bring that forward to you today. So today, the next slide, I'm going to just briefly run through really quickly about PCC, highlight some enrollment trends, our financial highlights, but also some institutional priorities through our fiscal sustainability planning. As we all know, the legislative session is coming up, so I'll highlight 4 key priorities that we are supporting and advocating for. And then I'll introduce you to our 2025 to 2028 strategic planning roadmap, and then highlight, what those next steps are for PCC, and then that way you can see some intersection and alignment of HECC in that as well. And so we'll start with the next slide with the enrollment snapshot. And as you can see, bars down means enrollment was declining and bars up mean enrollment is going up. And so over the last couple years, we've started to see enrollment trickling up. I will not go as far at this time to say that we are sustaining enrollment because it's too early and too soon, and we're still figuring out some things as we are walking through our strategic enrollment management plan, the first ever for the college, and we're working with Ruffalo Noah Lovitz on that. And so, but what you can see is 2023, 2024, we currently are sitting at around 53,820 students. Since last fall, we have consistently seen increases in our overall enrollment. And so I can say we're on the right track. We're implementing some of those strategic enrollment management priorities and initiatives now, which I do believe are reflective in the increasing numbers, but the sustainability over time is yet to be realized. And again, I want to just be cautious around that, but I do see the silver lining as Dr. Abby Lee mentioned, enrollment is increasing across the community colleges, as you can see here. The next slide I want to talk through is like the almighty dollar. We're like, show me the money. Where is the money? Where is it going? Cha-ching. And then sometimes there's like a hole in my pocket, But this dollar here, and I wish it was as easy as printing dollars, but Poppy is our mascot. I wanted to just really show you for Portland Community College where our support in terms of revenue comes from. And so it's simply broken down. 18% of that is through property taxes, 31% of that through tuition and fees, and 51% of that through state support. I do want to emphasize, about 7 years ago, the percentage of revenue that came from students' tuition and fees reached over the 40% mark. And we realized, and this was before my time, but we did not want to emphasize and rely and become dependent solely on the students. And as we think about equity and in terms of the financial barriers that our students face, we set some parameters. And so you can see here that much of our financial support is heavily relied upon through the state, the CCSF. And so our property tax revenue does come from 5 counties. It comes from Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, Columbia, and Yamhill counties. And so we have a pretty large footprint. We have 4 campuses and 10 centers across each of those counties. And so based on those percentages, just wanted you to see a visual of a quick breakdown of how our revenues are allocated at Portland Portland Community College. Now, on the flip side, the next slide talks about the expenses. So at a high level, you should be able to see, and it indicates where on the next slide, it indicates where our expenses are allocated. And so as you can see there, 82% comes from personnel, labor, and benefits. When you think about an institution our size, we have classifications of FFAP, full-time faculty, part-time faculty, academic professionals, classified, administrate, like the whole gamut, right? And so 82% of that comes there. And just imagine with me, if you will, the increasing cost of not only labor costs, but you've got cost of living that's factored into those. And we just recently came out in negotiations where over the next biennium, both our faculty FFAP and our classified were given a 14% over the 2 years increase. And so we're trying to really highlight and emphasize the value of our labor, but also at the same time balance that and weigh that against the financial picture for the college in whole. And you can see there 9% MS&S, materials and supplies, and then the other categories consist of funds transferred to internal funds such as capital projects, food services, grants, contracts, retirement reserve, and risk management funds. I will highlight one of the beautiful things about being at Portland Community College that is by no means an indicator of my leadership, but really an indicator of the history and reputation of Portland Community College is the success that the college has had with bond funding, which has been really significant and key for really uplifting some new buildings, promoting academic programs and services, and just being instrumental to the overall impact to student services and student success and those outcomes. Now, continuing with the numbers, I do want to highlight on the next slide just really quickly some trends in the YOY is the year-over-year revenue and expenses. So this is a snapshot since 2014, and what the breakdown is, the blue line, the dark blue bar aligned with the expense dollar that you saw on the previous slide is personnel, labor, benefits, and the orange or gold with you is a non-personnel expense, and then you have the other. And you can see that those lines have trended up. You can see in 2021, those lines, especially with the revenues, did peak, and we know that what was going on during that time was still the COVID time, and we had a lot of funding and one-time funding through COVID, the pandemic, and yet many colleges are realizing now that we have to create sustainability plans that will no longer and can no longer rely on that funding that happened through that period of time. And so that, just looking at the snapshot of the revenue and the expenses and where we're at financially as an institution, the next slide, I'd like to just introduce where we are at as a priority that I've uplifted at the college, supported by our board. And so we are currently in the process of developing a fiscal sustainability action plan. You know, we have a normal, we budget on the biennium, a 2-year schedule, but the fiscal sustainability action plan is something that is meant to give us a 6-year or 3 biennium look out and projection in terms of where we are, where we need to go, and what we need to be, what some assumptions built into that as well. This is something that with the goal around developing the budgets and strategies that promote the long-term fiscal sustainability while doing a couple of things, balancing our current needs, but also thinking of the future financial stability to just really ensure that continued support for student-centered initiatives. And so the next slide will highlight a few areas that this is centered around. And this fiscal sustainability plan is grounded in the student. We would not be here if it weren't for the opportunity to provide for the students and create that, that bridge and that catalyst for learning, but workforce and training, and be that pipeline to the overall ecosystem in the state of Oregon. And so we're focusing on balancing the financial needs without taking away from the quality education, but we're looking at resource allocation. How do we allocate resources differently? And when you think about that, when you think about the personnel expenditures, you think about expenditures related to our buildings, our infrastructure, you think about how we can allocate resources. We have vacancy budgets, and we can no longer rely on savings just through vacancies alone, which has been a great cushion. However, we need to take a deeper look into building some practices into the way we manage our funds. Also support services. We don't want to do anything that would adversely impact our ability to provide those necessary and critical support services for our students. So grounding the plan in that aspect is very important to us. And then as a community college, it's always important for us to maintain and keep our eye on affordable tuition and fees. While over the years, and even since I've been here, we've had a tuition increase, we don't want to get too far along with putting the burden on our students when we know we serve a diverse population of students. We have about a third population of our students are students of color, and we are also currently an emerging Hispanic serving institution with about a 22% student population in that demographic. So recognizing that we have a diverse student population, it is not your traditional student population that you would see in a normal four-year track. We have working families, we have students, we have immigrants, we have undocumented students, we have students from all walks of life that have various financial needs, and we don't want to be the burden, we want to be the opportunity. So the next slide I'll run you through is our 2025 legislative priorities. As one of the 17 community colleges, we are in support collectively of the Community College Support Fund budget ask. And so really briefly, what this looks like is I wanted to make sure and highlight the need across the state is currently estimated around 22.9%. And, you know, we would love to ask for the need and advocate for the need. However, what we would be advocating for is a 15.4% increase, which is the statewide community college request. We're also advocating, I'm sure you probably heard, around the Oregon Opportunity Grant increase, really focused on students, particularly those from underserved communities. Student basic needs, we know basic needs is a priority across the state, and our students are in the community, and our students are a part of that demographic affected by basic needs. And so we're seeking increased funding for benefits navigators. We're seeking funding for our open educational resources, and also just investing in the overall basic needs services. And then last but certainly not least is a Future Ready Oregon. Really investments from Senate Bill 1545. Those sunset on December 31st of 2024. And so advocating for continued Future Ready Oregon funds through the 25-27 biennium, it will allow HECC to continue funding the workforce readiness projects for underserved communities. And we know the benefit of that, especially with the targeted population of underserved communities. And when we think about equity and disparate impact of those underserved communities, this is an important mission of advocacy for us as a college as well. And so last, I want to bring it on home with a roundabout of the next to the last slide on our strategic themes. And so just last month, PCC's Board of Directors approved our 2025 strategic themes. Some refer to these as pillars or the foundational elements of college's priorities. And we have 6 here: operational excellence with a focus on effectiveness, efficiency, and fiscal sustainability, which I honed in on. Shared values, that's more internal to our employees, our college community, our faculty, staff, and students, but around people connectedness and empowerment when we're talking about shared governance, professional development, but also opportunities to create a space where that work environment is welcoming and belonging for all groups and identities and diverse backgrounds and ethnicities. Technological transformation, it's about agility, innovation, and readiness. You all have heard about the many changes in the landscape, and so I will just leave it there. And should I or should I not say AI? Don't say it. So holistic student support, so integrated, affordable, and accessible. And when we talk about student support, what comes to mind for me is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If students are coming to class, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the bandwidth to think about courses. First, they're thinking about how they're going to get their bills paid, how they're going to get their children to school or to the doctor. They might be taking care of parents. They might be thinking about the work schedule that they have to do, that they might not be able to get to their homework. So how can we provide integrated, affordable, and accessible student support services to really enhance the comprehensive wraparound services that our students need? And then academic excellence, focused on student success, delivery, as well as programming. And it's important to emphasize in this one that we want to hone in on our academic career pathways, ultimately empowering our students to achieve economic mobility, right? And achieve those positions in the workforce that provide livable wages. And so that is a core goal of ours. And then last but certainly not least, as we talk about fiscal sustainability, you've heard me say that PCC is one institution. We can't do what we do alone. It takes each of us working together together as one together, one, and that means for purposes of workforce, purposes of education, and purposes of industry alignment. And when we talk about that in terms of our strategic themes, we're also talking about workforce readiness. How are we preparing our students, adult learners, adult workers, those who need to upskill for the workforce and for the evolving needs in the workforce as well? And so that is very critical to us moving forward. And last slide, guess what? Thank you. Thank you. And so that is all I have to share. It's a quick rundown. And I'm a former sprinter. I like short events, and I'll get to the end very fast. But I do want to pause and take a breath. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them after the fact. Email me, or, I'll make myself, or let Ben know. And Ben and I meet quarterly. And so however you want to get them my way, I'm happy to entertain and address any questions you may have. But I honor and thank you each for your time today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bennings, for your presentation. Before we go to questions, I'd just like to say that I had the privilege and pleasure of visiting PCC several months ago as part of the tours of all the universities and community colleges that Vice Chair Heyman and I are doing. And it was incredibly enlightening. I mean, it's just a huge institution, and I'm glad to see how clear your board and you are stating your priorities. And I also want to just add one thing she mentioned, and I think we see it in all of the community colleges and the universities, about the basic needs for students. When that of maybe everything, as I've visited these campuses, that's what stands out, is just how exponentially it has grown, how creatively, and I first saw it at PCC, the schools are trying to address basic student needs. But when they tell us, and we tell the legislature and the governor, that these needs are not being fully met or even close to it, and the college navigators have helped there, everything that has been done has helped. But I mean, at PCC, they literally have tractor trailer trucks coming up with food and supplies for students, and they have a welcoming place to do it. And again, they keep putting emphasis on it, but the energy and resources that this is taking from the schools just to try to meet the most basic needs. And I just don't want us ever to lose sight of that. And we thank you for your work there and your leadership there. And questions, Commissioner Devlin.
Yeah, thank you. President Bennings, I want to congratulate you on your presentation and also congratulate you on something that wasn't presented. I've also read your budget for this biennium, and it's a very understandable budget, which is not always true for institutions, public institutions. I was going to ask about, before your time, in the 2017, 2019, and 2021 biennium, for personnel costs, your budgets were relatively flat. And I know that was achieved by actually reductions in number of personnel largely. And then we all know that there was overall inflation between 2021, 2022, and 2023 of 17% roughly. And then you have an increase in personnel costs of roughly 14+% for 23, 24. Is that the 14% increase you were speaking of? You're still probably in negotiations for the 25 biennium, correct?
Well, actually, we completed our negotiations with the FFAP and FCE earlier this year. Now, what's going to happen in January or February is the wage reopener. So we've already accounted for the increased costs through the recent negotiations that were settled, and yet to have a wage reopener that will be happening over the winter period.
Okay, but you've already had about a 14% increase in
the
current biennium. And I'm expecting your negotiations are not going to be easy by any means. But largely, those increases in 23, 24 were largely attributable. You can't go into negotiations where there's been 17% inflation and offer 2%. But what are you looking in terms of your increase in personnel costs for 25 for the 25 biennium, or can you say?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where we will land in terms of what we can do. I know I've started to have recent conversations with my finance team in terms of strategizing on our approach and recognizing that Portland Community College in terms of cost, labor cost, and looking at disparities in our pay might be, in some areas behind the curve. And so we're trying to reconcile that against what's happening right now, which is a comprehensive HR study. We've contracted with Troop, and so they are helping us walk through pay classifications, identifying any equity disparities, because that will also inform the recommendations in our negotiation strategy and overall personnel strategy as we move forward. And so that is currently in process with Troop.
Yeah, I did want to point out, and I've talked to this commission before, that DAS in their calculation of CSL used a factor of 14.5% for state employee costs and about 6.8% for other than state employee, i.e. community colleges and higher ed, which I don't think is going to prove to be adequate at all. Anyway, I wanted to again thank you for your presentation. And by the speed of your presentation, I can tell you were a sprinter.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you again, President Bennings, for being here and for your report.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we are at the end of our agenda for today. I think we have a tour for those of you who can go and are interested. And then I also wanted to note we have a dinner that is not official business. No official business will be discussed. So if you're at the table, don't bring it up. But anyway, a private dinner for commissioners at 6 p.m.
Yes, 6 p.m. at Higgins Restaurant.
At Higgins, just up the block from those of you who are staying where you're staying.
Are we going to try to do this again or
Tomorrow. Okay. So we will see you tonight at dinner, I hope, and then see you tomorrow morning when we will go back to official business. Thank you, everyone who presented. Thank you, Guthrie, as always. Thank you, Ben. I hope my car's still in the parking lot.